Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. This morning in Vancouver, Jody Wilson-Raybould broke her silence on her plans about her political future. And she won't be joining any parties. APTN's Chris McIntyre has the details.
This morning, a packed room to hear Jody Wilson-Raybould's highly anticipated announcement. She will be running as an independent candidate in the October 2019 election.
It is after much deliberation that I have decided to put my name forward for re-election in the 2019 election in Vancouver-Granville. And in this election, I will be running as an independent candidate.
Jody Wilson-Raybould says she is running as an independent candidate to be free from control or authority. She states that she is not a party person and thinks that politics needs to be done differently.
I think it would be an incredible benefit to lawmaking and the development of sound public policy to ensure that all voices are heard, that all voices contribute to the discussion, and in doing so create better public policy.
Wilson-Raybould alleged Liberal officials inappropriately pressured her to intervene in the SNC-Lavalin criminal case. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau expelled Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott from the Liberal caucus in April, saying trust with the two former cabinet ministers had been broken.
I think it's fabulous that she's running again and that she stands for who she is and what she's going to do as an independent. I think she's going to have massive influence in the sense that people highly respect her and that she's the first woman of her ilk to have gone to where she has, and I don't think it's over. I think this is just a new beginning.
Jane Philpott also announced today that she would be running as an independent. Wilson-Raybould will spend the next few weeks hearing from her constituents as she will be getting ready for the election in October. Chris McIntyre, APTN National News, Vancouver.
And stay tuned later in the show when I have a one-on-one conversation with Jody Wilson-Raybould about her decision to run as an independent in the upcoming federal election. Indigenous leaders are calling for action against what they say is the White Paper 2.0. APTN's Amber Bernard was at today's rally in Ottawa and has this story.
Indigenous leaders and allies gathered on Parliament Hill today to express their concerns with multiple Indigenous bills tabled by the Liberal government. Some of the acts in question are the Child Welfare Bill and the Indigenous Languages Bill.
I think this day of action and this rally that's taking place across Canada is a wake-up call to the generations that we just can't sit idly by.
Rallies like this took place in several cities across the country, opposing legislation like Bill C-92, an Indigenous child welfare bill that is anticipated to receive royal assent next month. But some are saying the bill doesn't give full or proper jurisdiction to Indigenous communities. One of the problems is that funding under the new legislation will still be given to provinces rather than First Nations.
We are First Nations. We're in the process of developing our own law, and this law on child care is pending. So in essence, we know what the problem is, and we will know how to fix it.
That's just one of the aspects of the concerns brought forward today. The recognition and implementation of Indigenous rights framework developed by the Liberal government is also under scrutiny for what Indigenous leaders say is like the 1969 White Paper that aimed to dissolve the Indian Act.
It is steeped in what everybody's referring to as the White Paper 2.0.
Indigenous leaders say they're planning more rallies like this throughout the summer amid the federal election in October to get their message across. Amber Bernard, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Hydro-Quebec announced an ambitious project for the northern community of Inukjuak, the construction of a $150 million renewable energy grid that could reduce carbon emissions in the community. There was a gathering in Montreal today to go over the plans for Project Inuvik. Lindsay Richardson has the details.
With 3 signatures, Hydro-Quebec says it's made history.
Bravo, félicitations.
Today, it introduced Project Inuvik, the first ever partnership between an Inuit corporation and an independent power producer, overseeing the construction of the first renewable energy project above Quebec's 53rd parallel.
This is a historical moment that will benefit the community First, Energix, Hydro-Quebec, but also the planet.
Come this fall, site preparation will begin for the construction of a 7.5 megawatt hydroelectric generating system powered by the current of the Inuktitut River near James Bay. It's a $125 million off-grid project, decades in the making.
C'est un défi, le Nord, mais je pense qu'on peut s'adapter et vous allez nous amener à trouver aussi comment s'adapter pour le Grand Nord.
When completed, the project will provide Inuktitut's 480 households with more sustainable energy sources, converting fuel-fired water and space heating systems into electric ones. Studies conducted within Inuktitut showed majority support for the project, but leaders have heard concerns from elders about environmental impact, potential issues like flooding, animal protection, and water pollution.
The river of Inuktitut is also the water source of the community, so water quality was an issue. There's issues raised on if there's going to be mercury produced, so we're going to keep monitoring the water quality as well as the mercury. We have programs that we're setting up currently in order to continue that we make sure that the quality will not be disturbed.
Pitavik President Eric Atagutuluk says while there are valid concerns, the project has been the subject of several impact assessments and presents an undeniable opportunity for community development and job creation in the north.
Generate economic development, support social initiatives, and education. These are the main areas where we're going to want to reinvest, but we'll be open once we come to that point.
The project is set to break ground sometime this fall, with a completion date set for 2022. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Montreal.
A 3-day event to honor murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls was held on Vancouver Island. The event was organized by a family seeking answers in the case of their missing family member who disappeared without a trace in 2011. APTN's Tina House has this story.
Here in the seaside town of Port Hardy on Vancouver Island, red dresses are hung from lampposts to symbolize murdered and missing women and girls. Carrie Lee Calder organized the event and says that there are more than 80 cases of Indigenous people that have gone missing or were murdered right across Vancouver Island.
Murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls is not an Indigenous issue. It's not a First Nations issue, it's a national crisis.
Calder's own niece, Angeline Pete, has been missing since August of 2011. She was living in North Vancouver at the time of her disappearance. However, she's originally from the Quatsino First Nation, just outside of Port Hardy. Her case remains active, but there have been no leads as to Pete's whereabouts.
I know somebody has answers about what happened to my niece. She has a son that's now 15 years old and has grown up without his mother. And I made a promise to him that our family won't stop looking.
And Carrie Lee has turned her sadness into action by organizing the first Kwak Wak Waki Wak Families Impacted by MMIWG event. Over 3 days, close to 300 people have come here to share their story about their missing or murdered loved one. Mabel James was one of them. She says that 20 years ago, her aunt was the victim of a vicious assault.
Even an auntie got on the wrong truck with some rowdy loggers. They took her down the logging road and raped her and beat her and just left her naked. And I'm not sure how long she was there. And they flew her to Vancouver General, and that's where we went to see her.
Brenda Wilson also came here to share her story about her 16-year-old sister, Ramona Wilson, who was found murdered alongside the infamous Highway of Tears in 1994. That took place just outside of Smithers, BC. Since then, she's devoted her life to help others.
We try to create an environment where we're safe, where we can walk proudly. We can walk without fear in our communities.
The organizers are hoping to make this an annual event. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Time to step aside for a quick break, and then we'll hear more from Jody Wilson-Raybould on her decision to run as an independent. But first, here's a story we're working on.
I'm Sophie Clo Miller, and I'm sitting on the banks of the Waswanipi River, where 6-year-old Bertie Diamond is calling in the geese. For the Cree Nation, the hunting seasons are the most important celebrations of the year. Most children of James Bay learn to call geese at a young age. APTN met with the members of the Cree Nation of Waswanipi as they were getting ready for this spring goose break. I'll have that story on the APTN National News.
Here's a look at Tuesday's weather forecast, starting on a sunny east coast. 15 for Halifax, 17 for Fredericton. +2 with showers for Nain, 8 and a chance of snow for Happy Valley Goose Bay. 21 with showers in Montreal, 18 in Saguenay. 15 and rain for Toronto, Peterborough, and North Bay. 13 with showers in Ottawa. 21 under the sun for Thunder Bay. 15 and rain in Sioux Lookout. +3 with a chance of snow for Churchill. 19 in God's Lake. 23 in Winnipeg. 25 for Dauphin under sunny skies. 26 for Regina, Yorkton, Estevan, and Swift Current. 28 in Meadow Lake. 27 in Buffalo Narrows. Welcome back. As we told you earlier in the show, Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott announced today they will run as independents in the upcoming federal election. We spoke with Jody Wilson-Raybould shortly after she made the announcement. Ms. Wilson-Raybould, thanks for taking some time for us. You've decided to run in the 2019 federal election as an independent. Why did you decide not to run for a party?
Well, I'm really excited today to announce that I am going to be running in the 2019 federal election as the independent candidate for Vancouver-Granville. A lot of things went into making my decision. First of all, I know that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected as the independent member of Parliament for Vancouver-Granville, I can continue even more so to express the desires and the perspective on important issues that are prevalent for the people in Vancouver-Granville, and I'm going to continue to do that. I took great consideration around looking at other parties. I had conversations, certainly with Elizabeth May of the Green Party, and those were good conversations. I want to be able to continue to collaborate with the Green Party. I see them as a natural ally on many issues, particularly around taking bold action on climate change. But generally, as an independent, this is the best fit for me. I know who I am. I know that I have a difficult time fitting myself into a political party because I want to ensure that we create the space for all voices to be heard in the community. That's how I was raised as an Indigenous person, knowing that when people come together, in my culture there were no political parties, and we function by way of consensus. Doesn't mean there isn't vigorous debate and discussion, but I want to do as much as I can to contribute towards that type of discussion, consensus-based decision-making or collaboration, call it what you may, but moving beyond partisanship, moving beyond the adversarial nature of politics, which so many people have become accustomed to, actually doing politics differently and creating that space for all people, for all members of Parliament to have a voice. That's the opportunity I see as being an independent member of Parliament. I am one right now, and hope to continue to earn the trust of the people of Vancouver-Granville in October of 2019, and to look at how we can make better decisions as parliamentarians all 338 parliamentarians to address the fundamental issues of our time, whether they be climate change, whether they be substantial reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, transformative change. The only way that we're going to be able to do that is if we reach across party lines, take a nonpartisan approach, and develop solutions, and to deliver those solutions that will stand the test of time.
What type of power do you think you could hold if re-elected in the House of Commons? Some people might think voting...
Sorry, what was that?
Just wondering what type of power you think you might be able to hold if re-elected in the House of Commons, as some people might think voting for an independent might be like throwing your vote away.
Well, I would seriously say to people and try to dissuade them from that view. I am the same person that I was when I ran in 2015. I still hold the same values and beliefs, values of inclusion, equality, and justice, and I'm going to continue to advocate for the issues that are important to me, but particularly important to the people of Vancouver Granville. And to be quite frank, since becoming an independent member of Parliament due to no choice of my own, it's been an interesting environment, and interesting particularly in the sense that I've had perhaps more opportunity to speak in the House of Commons, in committee, which I'm going to go to a committee tomorrow that's discussing the child welfare legislation. I've engaged in conversations with members of Parliament of every political stripe, and the sentiment that I've heard from many members of Parliament, certainly the sentiment I've heard from the thousands of messages that I've received, is that people do want to do politics differently, to move beyond partisanship and have discussions like we do in my culture about what we need to do to ultimately improve the lives of people, of Canadians, and to address issues in a way that supports that and not being determined or predetermined by a political party's platform, but that we truly come together as independents to have conversation, to see as much as we can to build consensus around these decisions. And I know from the history of my people, the Kwakwaka'wakw people of the West Coast, that consensus building and ensuring that everybody in a community has a role to play, like every member of Parliament in the House of Commons must have a role to play in expressing the views of their constituents. That is how communities stand the test of time. That is how Indigenous peoples have been resilient over time. And I think there's a lot to be learned from other ways of making decisions or other approaches to addressing issues that the Parliament of Canada could benefit from. And as an independent member of Parliament, I'm going to continue to advocate for that.
Jane Philpott has also announced she'll be running as an independent. Was there and will there continue to be a lot of conversation between the two of you?
Of course, I knew that that Dr. Jane was going to put herself out as an independent candidate. Also, I have had the benefit of forming a very close friendship, certainly, but a relationship as colleagues that is collaborative, that looks to ensure that we hear from different voices. Our bond was formed back in the early part of this government's mandate when we had to work towards legislating medical assistance in dying, an incredibly difficult and emotional issue for everybody. And it was through that process of hearing different voices, coming to as much as we could consensus. Although it doesn't make everybody happy, we saw the way to navigate through that and find balance. She and I come from or have very similar worldviews, but most importantly, we believe in working with everybody and collaborating. And I know that Jane and I will continue to do that. She is certainly a staunch advocate for the issues that she sees as important, and I have no doubt that she will be a strong advocate and continue to be a strong advocate for the people of Markham-Stouffville, and she and I will definitely continue to talk. She sits in front of me in the House of Commons, so I can always bend her ear.
Ms. Wilson-Raybould, we'll have to leave it there, but appreciate you taking some time for us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Time for another quick break, and then the story of a Métis community wiped off the map. Here's the rest of Tuesday's weather forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta. Smoky and 31 for high level, 30 in Fort McMurray. 29 in Edmonton, 27 in Red Deer, 26 for Medicine Hat. Sunny on the west coast, 28 in Bella Coola, 31 for Kamloops. 30 in Fort Nelson, 25 in Smithers, 22 in Dease Lake, 15 for Old Crow, Showers, and 20 for Whitehorse, 32 for Fort Liard and Trout Lake, 29's the high in Wrigley, +1 in Sax Harbor and Paulatuck, rain and 8 above in Colville Lake, +1 for Chesterfield and Whale Cove with snow and 2 above for Arviette, -1 in Clyde River, +1 in Igloolik. Welcome back. A new museum exhibit that chronicles a tragic historic incident has opened in Winnipeg. In the 1930s, an entire Métis community in western Manitoba was wiped off the map. Brittany Hobson has more.
The crowd was completely silent as Métis elder George Fleury shared stories of his childhood. What should have been happy memories were instead tragic.
We'd come home and found that we didn't have a home. Our house had been burned down while we were gone. And it was a sad situation. I was only 4 years old, but I remember seeing my mother crying and my father's shoulders heaving up and down like that. I know he was crying too.
Fleury was from the Métis community of St. Madeleine in western Manitoba. In 1939, hundreds of residents were forced to relocate when provincial and municipal governments took their land. They burned down their houses and shot their dogs dead. Their property was turned into community pastures. This history is part of a new exhibit at the Manitoba Museum called Nakishkishin, meaning I remember.
I didn't sense what the loss was, but in their hearts they knew what had been lost. They lost their homes, their livelihood, and their dignity.
The exhibit is displayed in Michif, French, and English. It includes artifacts and stories from elders, including Fleury. All that's left of the settlement today is a cemetery.
St. Madeleine is a piece of history that needs to be corrected. When you talk about reconciliation, well, come on, Manitoba, step up to the plate and let's do some reconciling.
The Manitoba Métis Federation continues to fight with governments to have the land returned. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And that's your APTN National News for this Monday. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.